My brothers and sisters, this is Garrett Bake, your brother in arms, and welcome to another episode of Awaken the Guardian. Today's topic, I really don't want to give it to you because it'll give away what it is that I'm going to talk about, but you're going to see it anyway on the summary of this episode. So here it is. What do you want? What do you want? So I want to tell you a little story. When I had about, let's go 5 years on, I was able to start working with the gang unit. Now, if any of you have ever worked with the gang unit, like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it is a completely different world. It's a completely different language. All of a sudden, you're reading body art. You're reading like hand gestures. You're reading language. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that is coming into play, and it was exciting for me. And so I hit the ground running. Literally, like first day, I'm like, "What are we doing?" They're like, "Well, we were thinking about this." I'm like, "Okay." And I went out and I found a gang member and I arrested him. And it just kept going every single day. It was like the only thing that I thought about was arresting gang members. Like, that's it. I had nothing else on my mind. And I was always super excited. I was always super motivated. Of course, part of that could have been due to the fact that I was consuming 2 to 3 cans of Monster a shift. But regardless, I was just always full of energy. I was always moving. And I had a partner who was always telling me, "Hey, dude, you got to slow down." And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I can't slow down. Like, this is what I do." And so I just keep going. And literally, there were times where, like, my partners refused to go out with me because, like, I wouldn't slow down. Well, this really just motivated me more to keep going. And one of the things that I didn't pay attention to was what the effects were of me just going until one day. So one of these shifts, I'm coming in from my house. I ended up having a take-home car, which is very nice. For those of you out there who experienced this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Except it wasn't like a super nice car. So when Crown Victorias used to be all the thing, I had one of those. Oh yes, it gets better. It wasn't just a Crown Victoria. It was a clean natural gas Crown Victoria, a CNG. So I would take this CNG car home with me and then drive it to work. Mind you, I didn't care that much because I didn't have to pay for gas or maintenance on it, which was nice. But regardless, it wasn't the super nice one. It was an unmarked Crown Victoria, so it was just white. I had lights in the visor and I had lights in the grille. So it was a pretty basic model. It was interesting for those of you who went through the CNG experience. Some cities went all in, and my city, Mesa, was definitely one of those. They went all in when it came to CNG vehicles. So I have the CNG car. I'm driving into work. It's a Saturday afternoon, bright, sunshiny day. Getting in the right frame of mind. Here we go. We're going to go smash some gangsters. And I'm merging onto the freeway. And as I'm merging onto the freeway, I see this Cadillac on the left side of me, and it is like hauling ass. 100 plus, I could tell. And I go to hit the gas. Well, if you've ever driven a CNG vehicle, you know that when you hit the gas, there's not an immediate response. In fact, it usually sounds like the engine is getting flooded. Now, this was a very interesting phenomenon because you literally would drive differently. You would hit the gas before you knew you needed to hit the gas because you knew there was a delay. So I hit the gas, and eventually I start going faster. Well, there was no way that I was going to catch this car. Like, the amount of traffic that was out there Saturday afternoon, like, it wasn't going to happen. So I pretty much given up on it. And I see him off in the distance exit the freeway at the next off-ramp. I'm like, oh, maybe there's a chance. So I quickly merge over, and wouldn't you know, I end up right behind him on the off-ramp. Now, it's Saturday afternoon again, super heavy traffic, so it's backed up like way back, like 20 cars deep. So I end up behind him, I turn on my lights. Get out of the car, I've got my vest, I'm walking up to the car, and it's occupied by 5 people, which is quite suspicious. They were all males. So something was up. I just knew something was up. I get to the driver's side window. I start talking to him. He's real evasive about his whereabouts, let's say. And so I get his driver's license, and I head back to my vehicle. Now, a little side note. Some of the things that I was doing at this time that were so, let's say, unsafe was I would I laugh at myself when I hear myself say this, but there was times where my first transmission on the radio would be one in custody en route to the jail. There were times when my first transmission on the radio were X-ray, whatever, foot pursuit. Which tells you what? Which tells you I wasn't paying attention to any of the systems, like at all. I wasn't calling off on traffic. It was just me sometimes. And of course, this time I had not called out on traffic. I was merely out with this vehicle. So as I'm walking back to my car, traffic, the green light hits up above at the overpass, and traffic starts to move. And so I start to push forward, I start to move back to my car, and as I glance back to the Cadillac, wouldn't you know that they did not want to stick around. The driver hit the gas, and off they went. So at this point, I finally call off on traffic, which sounds quite funny because I'm running back to my car as I'm yelling into my radio that I got a car that's taken off from me, but no one knows where I am. So I finally start to get that information out. He heads over the overpass and gets quite a ways ahead of me because I'm trying to play catch up. Hangs a right on the first street available and disappears around the corner. So I'm trying to catch up in my little Crown Victoria, struggling a little bit, a little CNG action. And as I come up over the overpass into the first street, I can see that he's made a right, and I proceed to try and follow him. As I get to the intersection, I try not to come to a complete stop. Why? Well, with the CNG car, what happens is if you come to a complete stop, you're going to have one hell of a time trying to get it going again. And I didn't want that. I was trying to cheat the system. So I came to a rolling stop, which was probably more than a rolling stop. Glance left and start to go. The problem is that I didn't glance left long enough. And there was a woman, an older woman, in a Toyota Corolla coming up over the crest of the intersection. It was too late. I was already moving into the intersection and proceeded to run into her. Now, luckily, I wasn't going super fast, neither was she. I hit the rear passenger door of her vehicle, spun me around, and that was the end of that. To make matters worse, the driver's license that he had given me was fictitious. It came back no record. The license plate on the vehicle from Texas was also suspicious. No record. So not only did I end up with no bad guys, I had nothing to follow up on. Oh yes, and by the way, I had been in an accident. Now for any of you who've ever been in an accident, you know it sucks. There is no way around it. For any of you police officers who have been in an accident, you know there's a little more suck that goes into it. If you're a large enough department, you have a vehicle operations review board or something of the sort, which again analyzes the accidents. And of course, there's no way to avoid the fact that I was at fault. So here I was, sitting on the side of the road waiting for my sergeant to show up, fuming because the bad guy got away, fuming because my car wasn't fast enough, fuming because I made a mistake, like ignoring the totality of the circumstances, ignoring what had really just happened. And so my sergeant showed up, and they ended up clearing the accident scene. A woman's daughter shows up to pick her up. And my sergeant says, jump in the car. I'm going to take you to the station. So I jump in with him, and we start riding. And during this ride, he starts to talk to me. He's like, what's going on? I was like, what do you mean what's going on? It was crazy. Like, I was trying to stop this car, and it took off, and everything was fictitious, and it's crazy. He's like, No, really, like, what's going on? And I didn't really understand what he was trying to tell me. And he proceeds to tell me that these words. He says, "You need to slow down." I was like, "What are you talking about? Slow down? Okay, I get it. I should have stopped at the intersection. My bad. Got it. Oh, and by the way, I have a CNG car. Did I tell you that? It doesn't go fast." And these are the thoughts that are going through my mind. But what he's trying to tell me is that I was completely out of control. But I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. So we get to the station. I eventually get another car, go home, and that's the end of that. But here's the problem. The problem was that I didn't change my modus operandi. I didn't change the way that I did business. I literally continued doing the exact same thing. So not even a few months later, we have a stolen vehicle. This stolen vehicle is being followed by the air unit, and one of our undercover officers pulls into an apartment complex. I'm racing to try and catch up because everybody wants to stop the bad guy in the stolen car. So this woman parks, she backs up, she ends up leaving the complex. I'm whipping around the corner, she's coming up to the intersection, and wouldn't you know that somehow I position my vehicle in a way that she hits me and traps my partner. Now, this was not done on purpose, but it was done in not the right frame of mind. I was completely out of control again. And so my partner gets trapped in the car. I have to race out of my seat. I try and open the door. I can't. So I race over, yank her out of the window. It's a mess, a disaster again. And this time, not only does my sergeant show up, but the lieutenant shows up. He's like, "What happened?" I was like, "Came around the corner and there she was," which is true. Problem was I came around the corner so fast I couldn't slow down. So now there's two incidents involving motor vehicles and me. And the fact that I have still not slowed down. This just happens to be the physical manifestation of that. So my sergeant pulls me into the office again. He's like, "Listen, the lieutenant doesn't want you driving a car." I'm like, "What? He doesn't want you driving a car?" I'm like, "Seriously?" He's like, "Yes." He goes, "You need to slow down." I'm like, thinking in my mind, I'm like, okay, I get it. I could have slowed down in the car. Still not understanding what he's trying to tell me. He's like, "Man, like, none of this stuff matters. Like, you gotta slow down." I was like, "Got it, slow down." So I was on timeout, if you will, for a couple of months as the passenger. Yes, I would drive to work, but then I would end up riding as the passenger with one of my partners. And you would think that this would be a humbling experience. But no, it actually motivated me to want to work harder. So now there's two of us. I'm like, well, we should arrest twice the amount of people that we did before, which makes no sense at all. So we proceed with this riding two-man for a little bit, and then finally I end up riding on my own. Well, we come across this case of these gangsters that were involved in a series of armed robberies. And long story short, we end up tracking these guys down in a vehicle. We're trying to arrest them. They know it. They're running. Kind of a pursuit, kind of not. We end up, nonetheless, in a gas station parking lot. And the only thing that I can think of is arrest the bad guy. So I proceed to position my vehicle in front of their vehicle because I thought it was a good idea to keep them from leaving. What I didn't tell you is my sergeant was riding with me at the time, literally in the front passenger seat. So what I had done, because I was unable to slow down and see things clearly, what I had done is I had put my sergeant directly in the line of fire. Yes, armed robbers with guns, which we did recover in the vehicle. My sergeant downrange. And I know you're thinking right now, who in their right mind would do something like this? Well, the answer to that is nobody in their right mind would, which should tell you that I was not in my right mind. So after this incident, he says, meet me at the office. So we go to the office. And he's like, the lieutenant wants to talk to you. So I go to the lieutenant's office. And I sit down, and he's like, listen, I love how hard you work. I love how dedicated you are to this job. But right now, you are becoming a liability. And we can't have a liability. So I didn't want to do this, but I have to. You're going back to patrol. And I sat there in that moment and I was like shocked and I was stunned. And I was like, is this really happening? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. And I told him that. And he said, you're going back to patrol. Like, you are a liability right now and we can't have a liability. Not in this unit. So I was stunned. I go down. I talk to my sergeant who was already aware of this. And I'm trying to figure things out. And I remember crying. A grown-ass man sitting in his office crying because I didn't want to go. Crying because I didn't understand what was going on. Crying because I was scared. So I end up going back to patrol, which for me was one of the most humbling experiences that I've ever had. Because at that time, I didn't understand. I didn't understand why. Why is this happening to me? Why right now? It didn't make any sense. So I'm struggling to understand this. At the same time, my personal life is falling apart. This was the beginnings of it, but it's starting to fall apart. Because what had happened is I turned into a mini version of a Tasmanian devil. You guys all remember the Looney Tunes shows, the cartoons. Anytime that Tasmanian devil got spinning around, like, watch out. Destruction and mayhem everywhere. And so at work, I was turning into destruction and mayhem. Literally everywhere I went, I would leave a trail of destruction and mayhem. Like, nobody had any doubt where I had been, because even if I got the bad guy and he went to jail, there was destruction and mayhem. But I didn't see this. Why? Because I was in the middle of it. See, at the same time, what I was doing at home was creating this destruction and mayhem. Like, my personal life was in shambles. Because my wife would tell me, you need to slow down. And I'd be like, no, I don't. And so I'd come home, and my children weren't sure which version was going to show up. The cool, calm, and collected dad, or the Tasmanian devil asshole dad. And so I would spin. And they'd run. And then I'd spin my wife. And she'd leave. Like, create distance away from me. And my house was chaos. And my personal life was a nightmare. And I still couldn't see it. And I remember thinking, no one understands this. Like, no one gets this. So, fast forward to where I'm at this lowest point in my life that I've talked about. The point where I've moved out, I've told my wife I want a divorce, the point where I'm almost living out of my truck at the police station because I'm working so hard, sedating myself with work so that I don't have to go home, sedating myself with alcohol, sedating myself with porn, sedating myself with prescription drugs, trying to numb this loneliness and this emptiness that I feel inside. Still with the gas pedal all the way down. Still trying to be a Tasmanian devil. And I remember it wasn't working, right? And so I decide I'm going to try and change things. Things, right? Not me, things. And I remember sitting down with my bishop at church. Now, whether you go to church or not, a bishop is basically an ecclesiastical leader. Some religions have bishops, some have priests, pastors, like it's all the same thing. It's the guy in charge of the congregation. So I'd moved back in under the premise that I wanted to work things out, still not knowing exactly what was going on. And I go to this man and I sit down in his office. And the first question he asked me rocked me. Because he asked me 4 simple words. What do you want? And I honestly don't remember the last time that I've been asked that. What do you want? And I leaned back in my seat, folded my arms, and just stared at him blankly. Because at that point, I had no idea what it was that I wanted. Like literally no idea. And it started me down this, I don't even know what to call it. Like people like the word journey, they like the word path, but it wasn't any of that. Like I was at the deep end of the pool, wearing a heavy vest, trying not to drown. And for the first time in my life, I realized that that was where I was at. Like I kept taking on water and not understanding why. And for the first time I saw clearly. Because of my decisions, because of my unwillingness to look around, I had literally walked into the deep end of the pool with a heavy vest and was struggling to stay above water. And it started to make sense. So why was I kicked off the gang unit? Because I couldn't answer this question. What do you want? I had no idea what I wanted. I had no idea what my true purpose there was. I simply wanted to arrest another gang member because I thought that that was what would give me satisfaction. That would bring me joy. That would make me feel wanted. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So when I went back under my terms, which is I want to work this out. Mind you, my wife at this time didn't want me back. She didn't want me back. Why? Because I couldn't answer this question. See, my inability to answer this question had actually left her all alone. She didn't want the Tasmanian devil back in the house. See, because what she learned rather quickly, as all smart women do, is that she didn't need me. So, she did what she needed to do, which was protect herself and protect the kids. She protected them and herself emotionally. She protected them and herself financially. Like literally, we got to this point where, and she told me to my face, like this shocked me. She's like, I don't need you. I make enough money to pay the bills. We'll be fine. I don't need you. And that was hard to take. That was hard to stomach. See, because as a man, you always feel like the knight in shining armor. Da, 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 I'm going to ride in on my white horse and save the day. It sounds cool, doesn't it? Like you see it in Disney movies all the time. The problem is that's not what women want. So, this question, what do you want? Started me down this path of first figuring out, hey, I'm getting kind of tired hanging out here in the deep end of the swimming pool with my heavy vest on, trying to tread water. Like this is not working. Okay, so this is not working. What is it that I want? And I had to examine that. I had to examine what was it that I wanted my career, my lifestyle to look like. What was it that I wanted my marriage to look like? What was it that I wanted my relationship with God to look like? Hell, at this point, what was it that I wanted my body to look like? Like, all these things are not working in my life right now, and I'm finally seeing why. Not because of anybody else, but because of me. So when I finally figured out what I wanted, that I really wanted my wife and my children, because I loved the companionship, because I loved the emotional support, because I loved sharing experiences with them, because I loved watching them grow, because I saw us long term being this close, tight-knit family, which we were not at that time. And that's what I wanted. Cool. So once I figured out what it was that I wanted, guess what I had to do? I had to start doing the work. See, I had to start at the bottom. It wasn't like my wife said, "Oh, come on back. You know what you want now? High five, fist bump, yay, let's go team." No. I had to start at the bottom. See, so at this time, I didn't even realize it, but my career, my career was mirroring my personal life. As my career went into the toilet, so did my personal life. So those of you out there that are listening, I want you to think about this. Like, think about your personal life and what's working and not working right now. And then think about your career, your job, your profession. And think about how they mirror each other. Positive or negative. Think about how they mirror each other. See, I had to start at the bottom. And call it what you want, but patrol is the bottom of police work. Yes, it's the backbone. Yes, they take care of the majority of the things that happen, but it's the bottom. Like, you don't go below being a patrol officer. Like, that just is what it is. And so I had to start there. And I had to start to work my way back. I had to do the same thing with my marriage. Like, it wasn't just, okay, I screwed this thing up, let me change this, and boom, off we go. It wasn't like a Rubik's Cube. I couldn't just find the right combination and then win. I literally had to start at the bottom. I had to learn how to actually build a relationship with my wife. I had to learn how to actually build a relationship with my children. You know, I talk a lot about God here. And I know a lot of you out there believe in God. Like, you don't currently have a relationship with Him, and I get it, because I went through a period of time when I didn't either. But I want you to consider that the anger and resentment that you feel towards God is simply because you don't have a relationship with Him. Like, He's not just going to randomly show up when you snap your fingers, or wiggle your nose, or cross your arms, or pray on your knees. Like, it actually requires work, just like your career does, and just like marriage does. So I had to start my relationship with God, again, at the bottom. Mind you, through this time, I was working, I say in quotations, working on my body, but it was working on the outside, right? I'll go to the gym, I do curls for the girls, I do some cleans and some presses and some bench press and some squats, and yeah. But my diet, like I told you before, I was going through 3 monsters a day. I was eating Whataburger. For those of you who don't know what Whataburger is, think McDonald's, but maybe a little cheaper. Like, my diet was horrible. And I wondered why I was always tired. And I wondered why my body never seemed to respond. And I wondered why I had an anxiety attack at work, thinking I had a heart attack. Only to find out that I was pre-diabetic. 5'10", 180 pounds, pre-diabetic. Yes. So I had to start at the bottom there as well. So consider in your life, consider that when things aren't working, you simply have to ask yourself one simple question. What do I want? What do I want? And this one simple question will open up a world of possibilities for you. But this is what I can tell you from experience. Figuring out what you want is only the first step. Like merely the first step of figuring out, what is my life all about? Because maybe when you were 19 or 20 or 21 years old, your career, or your lifestyle, or what you do for work, like made sense. Maybe it did. But maybe it doesn't anymore. Or maybe you just need to get back in touch with that. And I talk to police officers because it's such a difficult environment right now to be a police officer. I remember when I first promoted and went back to patrol, the Axon cameras were becoming popular. And every briefing we would show these videos. I would show videos of cops either getting recorded or their Axon cameras. And I would tell these patrol guys, like, everything you do now is being recorded. Like, there's no way around it. And it's only gotten worse. So it's difficult to be a police officer. I get it. That's why it's so important for you to be in touch with why it is that you're doing it to begin with. Because that's the only thing that's going to get you through. Your marriage. I'd like to sit here and say that all is pretty and there's rose petals and hummingbirds at my house every day. I wake up, my wife has a smile on her face. She always wants to have sex with me. It's awesome. Except it's not true. Like, listen, like, just because you're on the path of where you want to go doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Some days it seems like it is, and some days it's really not. But that's okay. See, because for once in my life, I know what I want. I know what I want in my relationship. I know what I want with my children. And so when the days get tough, it helps guide me. Guide me back to what it is that I really want. Same thing with God. See, for the longest time, I felt abandoned, alone, afraid. Why did you let me get to this, God? Only to realize that I was the one that had destroyed the cell phone that he'd given me. Like, the reason there was no connection is because I'm trying to call him, but I broke the phone. And I'm blaming him because I can't hear him. I can't connect with him. Oh, I broke the phone. Like, he's there. And you all know this. Because you all go through periods of time in your life. Things happen. And there's a voice, a whisper, a feeling, whatever you want to call it, in your heart that tells you to do or not to do something. That, my friends, is the voice. That, my friends, is God letting you know that he's there watching for you. And finally, your body. Like, listen. None of you wants to be the guy who 5 years after he retires dies. How many cops do you know that happens? Too many. It's because their body tried to keep up for 20 plus years and finally couldn't do it anymore. So start treating your body like it means something. Start treating your body like a tool, like a weapon. And it'll start to treat you better. All right, that is it for today's episode. Didn't know we were going to go there, and well, we did. As always, I've got something for you, but we're going to switch things up a little bit. See, I was offering you guys this gap map, which is really cool, but most of you are like, I don't want it, or you wouldn't use it. And I get it, because I was the same way. So I'm coming up with something new. Hopefully by the time you get this, it'll be up, but I'll be honest with you, it may not be. And this is basically a tactical guide. All cops like tactical guides. This is the tactical guide to becoming an elite cop. Because what I want to show you is that it's possible to take the skills that you learned, the tools, the tactics, the techniques, as a police officer and apply them properly to your personal life to actually have the life that you desire. I am case study number 1. And I want to share that with you. So it's going to be a free guide, and we're going to kind of explore these topics as we go through in the following weeks. But I want to let you guys know that that's coming. If you go to the website, awakentheguardian.com, not quite there yet, but it will be soon. And I promise you it'll be available for you. So on that note, your challenge for the week is ask yourself that simple question. What do I want? What do I want? As always, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one.